You are now tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation. The place where stars and minds align.
Peace. You're now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Herut, and I got my good brother here, Brother Ra. How you doing?
Oh, brother, excellent. Enjoying life, enjoying my students. Peace out to y'all. We definitely enjoying these classes that we're doing, learning leaps and bounds of knowledge. So I can't say, man, this is one of the best times of my life, brother. I don't know about yourself, but I'm loving life. How about you?
Man, everything's well, man. The podcast is doing well, of course. And I'm working on this second short film. We're in production now. So that should be out next month. I'm trying to get it out before everything shut down heavy again. But man, everything is working good, man. I mean, I've been really able to kind of capitalize off of the situation and stuff like that's kind of freed up some things, allowed me to kind of do a lot of things at once. So I'm definitely enjoying the process. Indeed,
yeah. I mean, it just gets greater from here, man. I mean, the podcast is doing well. Film is taking flight. So, it's only upward from here, my friend.
Absolutely.
Only upward from here.
Absolutely. But before we get too far, I want to remind you all that this episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group and Calibrucia Astrology and our good people over there on Patreon. Thank you all for all your support and, all of the questions and everything that you contribute to the show. If you want to get with us on Patreon, you can go follow us on Instagram and you'll see us right there in the link tree, and Patreon is right up there. So you click on that and, go ahead and, lock it in and, and you can start, hitting us up and, making your contributions to the show or whatnot. Cause it's more than just questions and stuff like that. Like, the Patreons actually, come through and, make suggestions and stuff. We've made little changes in the show based on that. So, if you got ideas, you got things, that you think, that can help take the show to the next level and stuff like that, hit us up. All right. And, as far as Push It Forward Media Group, you can find us on Instagram at Push It Forward, PUSHITFWD. You can find us on pushitforward.com at that same handle, pushitforward.com. Also, Ninth Lord Films. Follow Ninth Lord Films, right? That's 9TH Lord, LORD Films on Instagram and ninethlord.com, right? Spelled just that way, ninethlord.com, and you can go on there, check out the short film and any other new material we got going on. Brother Ra, how can the people get with you?
Oh man, same calibruciaastrology@gmail.com or Facebook or IG via Shechem Ra. So either one of those can definitely hit me up. People have been getting at me at the Calibrucia Astrology email. That's what's up. A lot of people have my personal email, but Calibrucia Astrology really is where I want everything to kind of funnel through. So that would be the first preference. If you could hit me up that way, that'll get you the fastest answer. Because I have so many emails coming through other venues and avenues, and it's just that probably would get my attention a lot quicker because it's actually down. I mean, it hits right to my phone. So definitely hit me up on the Calibrucia first. If you can't get me that way, then, the other means would definitely hit me up as well.
Absolutely. So, we're here, at episode 16 and, we crossed that at 40 episode threshold last week with episode 15, and we were getting some interesting feedback from that. Whenever we hit relationships and things like that, it's always it definitely, when I go back and I look at the analytics and everything like that, those relationship episodes always, have a high number, always perform pretty well. So we hit the opposite side of the spectrum this time, and seeing we got a lot of good feedback on it. What about you, brother?
Yeah, it seems to be. I mean, a lot of people want to kind of have an idea of what their love life looks like, for lack of better words. I don't know if you want to call it that, but their love life, a lot of people want to know, am I with the right person? And, how does this work? How long can it last? And, what are the pitfalls? And everybody wants to know that. I mean, that's really the most common area I think that people contact me for is, really, what does it look like for the long-term perspectives of relationships? So it's not surprising. It's not surprising. And we're going to have we're going to have some shows that do explore a lot more along those lines as far as relationships and compatibility and things like that. So stay tuned, folks. It's going to get better. We do get more of those goodies that come along. But, it is good to see that the Pyramid Show, I think, did very well as well. I think Pyramid Show, I think I got a lot of good feedback from that as well. So, people have their favorites, people have what they like, but, I understand why people tune into those, because you start looking, you start looking, wait a minute, let me look at this. I got your chart. Hold on, let me see, right?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of like how people go, but, it's to be understood, definitely understood.
Indeed.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You got it.
Very good. Good.
Yeah. So, yeah, man. I mean, I saw that one definitely. Hey, I don't want to sound like an analytics guy, but looking at just how certain episodes perform. The Pyramid episode definitely performed very well, because a lot of people have been asking about that one since the first episode. And then the pyramids is the pyramids. You know what I mean? It's always, it's always is always going to be a relevant, thing. Our ancestors did they did an excellent job of really tapping into that, and bringing that forth and stuff like that. But yeah, man, it's it's a good process. I'm for me, I definitely want to see this podcast propel into a semi-mainstream format, you know what I mean, as far as just being able to have Jyotish or just the sidereal perspective on astrology a thing, you know what I mean, and stuff like that, so hopefully we can do that, and I think this is the right vehicle towards bringing it into that light that way.
I agree.
Indeed.
100%.
Indeed. But you would see, you want to do the questions now, you want to do some questions at the end?
Well, no.
Okay. All right. So we got a question coming from both Patreon questions, right? The first one is, you have any remedies for Mongol dosh?
Mongol dosh, Mongolic dosh, Mongolic, to be Mongolic. There's a couple things about Mongolic dosh, because it's based on Mars, first of all. And Mars is a planet that is treated differently, more or less, in different cultures. In the West, right, we're more Mongolic anyway, if you want to be brass tacks, right? We're kind of more Mongolic just by disposition.
Yeah.
Right.
Kicking it with the Aryans.
Yeah. We don't really take the
Aries, man.
Yeah, exactly. We don't take the more refined approach They kind of say chivalry is dead, if you will, but it's different in the West. In the East, Mongolic is viewed upon as a real. It's called a dosh, right? An affliction. That's what dosha means. It's an affliction. So, yeah, you got to understand. In the West, right, we can divorce easily, right? When these ideas were crafted, what they were intended to convey is really, divorce wasn't really something that was like the looked upon means, even though it was a part of, how things work. So marriage was looked upon as more of a sacred, sacramental thing. It wasn't something that was just done because you liked the person, right? And so that approach, Mongolic has it stains a lot more on the fabric of Eastern societies, versus in the West, right? It's the stain is not so. It's the blemish is not so there. So much it's there, but it's not as rough. So that's the first thing I just want to say, is that Mongolic is different per culture, right? Every interpretation of this knowledge is going to be different per the culture that is supporting the people that live there and the people that are living out the areas that are being examined, such as relationships, profession, and so forth. So we kind of have to adjust it to understand the real underlying meaning of it. But the real remedy for a Mongolic is to marry another Mongolic, right? That's the best remedy, right? Because it cancels. I don't want to say cancel. When I say cancel, folks, I don't mean like cancel like all the way gone. Like there's nothing there. It's peaches and cream and everything's just right. No. It means that it's the work that's involved is commensurate with the effort that's put out and what's also received. In the Mongolic relationship with another Mongolic, there is an underlying hidden... the life force attracts and repels people, right? It's automatic.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're attracting and repelling, and there's another energy that is doing something similar, it's two negatives equal a positive.
Yeah.
So it's the same manifestation of that energy within the context of relationships. When two martial energies meet up, they kind of know, well, this is kind of like the person that can handle me. Ever heard somebody say he can handle me?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Right. Let me just let me boil it down. Right. He can't handle me. I'm too much woman, man. Oh, you're a Mongolic. Oh, I got you. And it's not foreign. It's not, it's like, it's not so hard. You're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. To us, it's nothing. Right. Because we don't really see it as such. But to understand what it's saying is that, she can't handle me. I'm just too much for her. Yeah. And then you meet a woman. Oh, she understands me. That's what Mongolic dosh cancellation really does. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You kind of understand. I used to have a boss. I used to work a part-time job at this gas station, and this was a while ago. Just trying to get some extra money, and she had a boyfriend, right? And she had me do the guy's chart, right? And her chart too. And I just, I pulled it up just so I could see some stuff, because I like to know who's around me. And so I did it. I looked, she's Mongolic, major Mongolic, like bad. Mm. And I pulled his chart up, Mongolic. But the conversation was always, well, he's a bad boy. I like bad boys. I'm like, oh, do you? She's like, yeah, I do. But that Mongolic nature, and she's like, oh, I could say something and go off on him, and then I know when to stop. I know when to halt. I know when not to go there. That's Mongolic dosh cancellation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. So, and for the man too, right? Man comes in, he knows he didn't eat the dinner. You better eat some on that plate, right? Because he knows Mongolic dosh, right? Might let them know how she really feels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a equal understanding. So if you're really looking to really do a remedy, the remedy for Mongolic is to find the Mongolic, right? That fits in other capacities, because Mongolic is only one aspect of looking at a compatibility component in the chart. So, I would definitely run with that first before I start trying to do other things, such as mantras or hakao or, yagyas or sacrifices or rituals, things like that. Gemstones work on a lower level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gemstones not going to change your relationship, y'all.
Yeah.
It's just not, right? It's not gonna change you. Let me say this. What it will do is facilitate the change in the auric field, which will allow the different thoughts to resonate and maybe interface with the thoughts that are there that may be challenging to those thoughts that might operate you and put you into a different position to attract or repel certain things that are or not supposed to be in your life. That's what the ring does.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're not receptive to them and you have a challenge with understanding or a challenge with processing those thoughts, because it'll start to mess with you a little bit. That's why they say try the ring, try the gem on before you start wearing it every day, because they want you to see if it's going to resonate with you, as they say, right? So the ring can give those changes of thought patterns and energetic patterns, but it's not going to just change miraculously things around you. It can produce some like effects in regards to sudden things, but it's not a sustained thing, right? The only thing to sustain is the access point to that energy in your auric field. And there's a whole nother conversation of how that works. But nonetheless, right, the best remedy for Mongolic is to find another Mongolic.
Indeed. So hopefully, that answers the question for you, my brother. And the other question we got is, does the condition of Jupiter and Moon in D9 chart cancel the Gajkashari yoga in the D1?
No. So what is a Gajrakasari yoga? So Gajrakasari yoga is when Jupiter is in the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th house placement from the moon. And really, it's Gaja is an elephant, right? It's like it's a yoga, and a yoga is a planetary combination in Jyotish or in Vedic astrology that we look at that carries a certain type of outcome with regards to those planets. So Jupiter, right, is the planet of wisdom, guidance, insight, foresight, keen perception, ability to foretell events, spirituality / religion, all those things, right? So when it has a specific propensity to be in an angular position, 4, 7, 10, or in conjunction with the moon, then that angular position creates an angular momentum, right? And so that momentum then allows the mind, which is the moon, to filter or to not only filter but to kind of inculcate or bring in those qualities that Jupiter holds, right? And so there's no cancellation of a Gajrakasari yoga. Just you can't do it. But what you can do is modify or qualify the yoga. And so I don't want to get into a whole class about how to do that, or dissertation rather. But the way you look at it is the moon and Jupiter should be positioned well, right, in the chart. Now, if these positions are in the natural 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th house, that number one boosts the yoga. right? Because it's now interlaced into that person's perception of reality directly. It's a part of the cross that they bear, right? So that's the first thing, qualifying it. Qualifying the yoga is what we always do, not just having the yoga, right? Once you qualify it, then you say, okay, well, yeah, let's say if it's in the first house and Jupiter's in the seventh. So then this is going to come by way of the mate. The Gajrakasara yoga is going to bring a mate that's going to have these qualities. Fourth house, different qualities. Seventh house, different qualities. So this is what I mean by qualifying it. Then you take and know the position that Jupiter is in, right? And even if it's in the D9 or the Navamsha chart, that Navamsha chart should do the same thing with the D1 or Rasi chart, which should show and qualify that to be a healthy, viable yoga. So if Jupiter is debilitated, for example, right, that can change the qualification of the Gajrakasara yoga, even though it's still there, right? It never the blemish or the dosha of a debilitated planet doesn't go anywhere. It just, there's cancellations to it, but there's still the challenge. A weakness becomes a strength, right? But you still have the weakness.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to go through and qualify it. But no, to answer the question ultimately, bottom line, a Gajrakasara yoga is a yoga that cannot be canceled. It can be qualified, but not canceled. Right. If it's qualified at the highest level where Jupiter is in Cancer, right, and it makes sense because Jupiter is in Cancer and the moon is the ruler of Cancer, that's an extremely powerful Gajrakasara yoga. Right. Jupiter in Pisces, Jupiter in Sag, in the first, 4th, 7th, or 10th, powerful, right? Jupiter in Aquarius, right? Also a hidden exaltation most people don't know about, right? Jupiter it's in Parashar. You can go look for yourself, right? It says that Jupiter is akin to exaltation in Aquarius.
Yeah.
Right. There's a whole, right, there's called a Kumbh Mela when people come and they gather, right, and when Jupiter's in Aquarius every 12 years, right? It's a grand Kumbh Mela, right? It's a grand where all the sages and the gurus meet at once.
It's coming up in a couple years.
Yeah, I got Jupiter in Aquarius, right? So, but nonetheless, right, and if you want to look at an article on it online, it's called, there's an article by Sanjay Roth, right, on it. He breaks it down pretty good, right, of why it's considered akin to exaltation. But nonetheless, right, so that cancellation never happens, right, with a Gajrakasara yoga. Just Jupiter will always, when it's in a angular position from the moon, it just will do well, right? It just does. And it's part of it is actually the qualifications for a cancellation of a debilitation Jupiter is to have the moon in 1, 4, 7, or 10 from that particular, but it's one of the ways it's canceled. So automatically, you see what I mean? That cancellation is there, so you never have a cancellation of that yoga. You can't, right? That's why you can't cancel it. Because it would cancel the debilitation of a debilitated Jupiter in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? But nonetheless, right? So to answer the question, because I'm going to be long-winded with these things, no, you cannot do that regardless of the position in any of the Vargas charts. And in fact, that's a really excellent segue to today's show.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I'll let you kind of take over and then, let me know. I'll just jump right on in.
Well, I mean, today's shows, we're going to go over something that's pretty, unique to Jyotish, and it's something that I don't have any never heard of in a Western astrology or anything like that, is the divisional charts. And I mean, we get a lot of questions about them. They're very important, and I think today, man, you just give a good kind of overview and just their role, in the grand scheme of things, and stuff like that.
Indeed. So there are Vargas charts in Western astrology. They're just called harmonics.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're called harmonics. And they work similarly. Like they do have some similarities, but we're going to talk about the differences today, right? Because they do have them. In fact, some of them even go pretty high. They go pretty deep. When I say high, high is relative to low, right? Always. So when I say high, it's always relative to going deep, right? So they go deep in as far as the cuts, but the cuts comes. We're going to talk about that in a minute, right? Why some of the way they use it is a little skeptical for me, right? But some people swear by it and they use it, and I have very respect for someone that can apply something and show me that it works. But I have yet to see it work every time, and there's a specific reason why. But let's talk about it. So Vargas charts, right? They're divisional charts. And they're charts that we in Jyotish as astrologers use to fine tune, right? Certain planetary placements, right? And so it's kind of like taking a piece of something and opening it up to its barest constituents to unpack it all, right? You have an apple, right? You see the apple, it's whole, right? But when we cut the apple, the apple has a 5-pointed star inside of it, right? So from the outside, you wouldn't see that, right?
No.
You would never see 5-pointed star inside of it. But when you cut it, wow, right? You have a pentagram inside of it, right? So seeing that, oh wow, right? The apple has a pentagram in it, so it is created by the Fibonacci process, right? Because 5 is a key number in the Fibonacci series, right? And you can look that up for yourself if some of you folks don't know what that is. Just check it out. But understanding that from the surface of something, yeah, it does have this perception, but there's a deeper meaning to that particular thing, right? Whenever you look at something from the surface, you see it, but, it has, the human body, for example, has how many different types of cells in it? Brain cells, or nerve cells. You have blood cells. You have immune cells. You have, bone cells. So you have every kind of whatever tissue you have is just a cell for it primarily. So the same way, you see the whole person, but we want to know, hey, that part, right? What's that part doing? We want to know what the cardiovascular system is doing. So we unpack that and we can see it is a system, and it works with the whole, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Excuse me. And so understanding it works with the whole, the Varga or divisional chart has to always be tied to the whole, right? It just doesn't work on its own so well. I mean, it can stand alone, and these become actual charts that we garner from the original chart, which is called the Rasi, right? The main chart is called your Rasi chart, and that's where we begin to start to cut and slice to understand those smaller components of that particular area that we're looking at, right? So, for example, right, I want to know about your brothers and sisters, siblings, right? I'm going to go to what's called the Dracana chart, which cuts things in 10 degrees. Every 10 degrees creates a new sign, right? And that allows me to see a lot of different things. It allows me to see your ability to express yourself. It allows me to see your level of courage, right? How you handle information, how you regurgitate information, how you process adversity, right? Are you good with are you good with bridging people and bridging ideas in order to make them holistic concepts? That's the Dracana. Education, I can see a great deal. A person's education can be seen, not necessarily the education itself, but their education propensities, meaning their mental inclinations or their study habits, is the Dracana. All of it because it deals with the harmonics of the third house, or it deals with the actual the underlying way that the third house is going to express itself via different planets within that particular Varga or divisional chart. Right. So if Mercury is in the third house in the divisional chart, that person's propensity to speak is excelled. Right. Because that's the natural place where it's going to do very well. Right. In that position. So they're going to have the gift of gab, even though we might look in the third house in the Rasi and there may be nothing there. Right. There will be other things to support it because the D1, the Rasi, has to support what's in the D3 or in the Dracana chart or in the chart that's cut 10 degrees, sliced 10 degrees, every 10 degrees is a new sign. Right. So, right, these charts become fundamental in understanding different areas, different aspects of life. Right. Another one, right, and let's just go down the line, right? It starts with the Rasi, right? That's 30 degrees. But then we look at the Hora, right, and that's more or less your wealth, right? We can see how well you handle money, resources, right? How if you something passed down, can you sustain it, right? And there's other uses for it, right? We won't explore them all. But just understand that each one is going to reflect. So the Hora is the second house type chart. Because it cuts things in half or in twos, 15 degrees, right? The Dracana, right? And this is what you learn inside the class, right? So we're not going to go through each and every aspect of all of them, but we will touch on a lot of the major ones, right? So another major one, right? And they go through Dracana, Chardachamsha, Panchamsha, Shastamsha, Saptamsha, Ashtamsha, Navamsha, Dashamsha, Ekadamsha, Svadashamsha, Vimshamsha, Chartavadamsha, or the Siddhashamsha. And I mean, it keeps going up. Trimshamsha, right? And you've heard me say some of these in the past class. Like, in fact, the Trimshamsha, right, is the chart that we use to gauge the virtue of a woman, right? The virtue are not saying, there's a lot of women can take that in a way that's saying a woman has, man can't be virtuous either, should be absolutely, right? But the energy of male and female in the light of how things are designed is just very different. Just is. I'm not trying to be biased, chauvinistic, or anything like that, but it's just form and function goes with it. It just does. It's kind of how nature designed things to keep it a certain level of integrity. So we can look to that D3 if that level of integrity for a woman is there, in regards to how she handles herself, in regards to being chaste, being able to control her sexual energies. Certain things we can see in that D30. More so for a woman, but also we can see other things in general just with regards to the karmic outlay for a man as well. Right, but that Trimshamsha is it slices things by degree, so every degree is a different sign. So if the chart is off, and this is where the challenge of using the Vargas comes in, because the time has to be precise.
Yeah.
Right. If the time is off by 1 minute, let's say by 1 degree,
changes everything.
Right? It changes everything. Well, the Trimshamsha is by degree, right? So the chart changes, right? The sky changes every 4 minutes is a different degree. Right. You also can use it for twins. That's the other thing, right? We do use it to see differences within the internal dimensions of individuals that are born near to or close to the same time. So there's other avenues and uses for the Vargas. The Vargas charts they're multifaceted with regards to how we apply them. It's quite interesting how many uses you can get out of the Vargas, right? But and Amsha means division, y'all. Just so you know, Amsha. So when we say Nav Amsha, means the division or to divide into 9 parts, right? Charatamsha means we divide it into 4 parts, or 7 degrees 30 minutes. Right, so it's a fourth of a sign because we have 7 degrees 30 minutes. 7 degrees 30 minutes equals 15 because 30 and 30 equals 1 degree. So it's cut into 4s, right? So we use these charts to really begin to kind of take a planet, for example, and look deeply into the intricacies of how that particular force in your life is going to be kind of activated in different parts, right? So the most famous Amsha or division, right, is the Navamsha, right?
Yeah.
That is the most famous and is rightfully so the most important, right? Divisional chart, because it is cutting things into, right, 9 parts, or looking at it from the 9th house perspective.
Yeah, that's big. Because when you see, a lot of information out there on the Vamsha, the 9th house is rarely mentioned at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a reason why. Because, when you begin to study this, if you're a wise astrologer, when you begin to learn these techniques and things, you want to ask questions. Why is it for marriage?
Yeah.
Why is Venus the Karaka, and each of the divisional charts has a planet that stands in as the emissary for that chart, just like it stands in as the emissary for that area of life, in other words, right? So Saturn, right, and Sun, really, right, you want to look to those in the Dashamsha, right? Dash means 10, Amsha, division, right? When you look at the Dashamsha, right, you look at certain planets to find out what the propensity or the kind of outlay is for you to do your karmic work, which we call profession, right? So each one kind of has its own, right, planet that we look to in that chart. But getting back to the Navamsha, the planet that you look to understand the chart in as a whole is Venus. And when people say, yeah, that makes sense, right? Because Venus is the planet of love and relationships, right? It is. But that's not what it's about, right? Venus, see, when you understand it, see, the whole system of Jyotish has stories that interlace things to give you an understanding of why certain things are kind of delineated or said in certain ways. Venus is the Karaka or significator of relationships, but Shukra is the name for Venus in the system. And Shukra is a very powerful guru. So now we can connect 9th house to guru, huh?
Yeah.
But not Jupiter. Right? Which is the name for Jupiter is guru, right? In Jyotish. But Shukra is also a guru. In fact, in Jyotish, Shukra is a more powerful guru than guru. Shukra Dev is more powerful than Guru Dev, right? And the reason, we won't get into all the story behind that, right? We'll do that for another show. But just know Shukra, Venus, is a guru, right? In fact, you should be, folks, if you can, look out at about 9-ish, 10-ish your time, wherever you are, respectively, wherever you are at that time. You should be able to look out to the southeast and see Jupiter in Sagittarius, as well as Saturn in Cap. And Jupiter is extremely bright. It's a very bright, it looks like a star. It's very bright. But Venus is extremely bright.
Yeah.
When you see her, she steals the show.
It almost looks like a fake light, like a.
It does. And on a faint night, she can cast a shadow. Right?
Yeah.
So you see what I mean? She's that powerful. And Jyotish, Shukra is extremely powerful, right? But it's a male, not female. But nonetheless, right? The story behind it is extremely enlightening, because Shukra is the teacher of the Asuras, right? And we won't get in, like I said, we won't get into that. But just know that in context to what we're talking, the ninth house, the ninth harmonic, is about keeping a vow. Well, Shukra kept a vow long enough to gain knowledge of how to raise the dead. So that vow of penance, that promise to keep doing something until self-mastery is attained, is one of the things that Shukra gives when Shukra is used properly. But the power to keep a promise, the power to keep a vow, is ninth house matters. That's all it is, right? When you take a spiritual vow, you can take a vow of what? Chastity. A vow of what? Silence. A vow of what? Fasting. You have different vows. Well, a vow of marriage is the highest level of spiritual development for what's called a householder.
Yeah.
Right? Because the closest thing to you is your mate, not your mama, right? Your mama had you, but she doesn't know you. She knows you as her child, but she doesn't know you. Your mate knows you. And see, when you see in the East, when they bow to you, right? They're not bowing to you. They're bowing to the divine in you. Because we recognize that the divine is inherent in each of us. So if that's the case, then the person that I marry is the closest person that I would say is a reflection of the divine to myself. And to keep a vow to that is the highest level of spirituality for what we call a householder or a commoner. A person that doesn't take the spirituality to the next level, like priesthood and things like that. Right? So when we talk about, right, and this is just the understanding of one of these charts, the D9 is understood. It's a chart of keeping your promise, chart of keeping a vow long enough to sustain your marriage, to sustain the spiritual development that is required to understand that the person across from you is God just like you, and you have to respect and honor the God in that person as you would yourself.
Yeah.
That's why the D9 is what it is. But we also can speak your spiritual propensities as well, right? Because if you have a Venus that is defunct, right, or a challenge, you'll be losing your seed, semen / energy life force. And for a woman, it would represent the character, nature, and who she is, as to attract a man to cause him to lose that seed or energy. So we see that in the D9, right? And his old song, Stevie, that's my girl. She says, you don't use her love to keep me weak. She uses her love to keep me strong. Right? Yeah. That's Venus for a woman in her D9. D9 is deep. We go. D9 is a whole set of conversations, right? But nonetheless, the other, Vargas or Amshas or cuts of the chart, or cuts of the chart. One that I really find very fascinating is the Siddha or the it's cut into basically 1/24 of a chart. So every every 1 degree and 15 minutes is a Siddha. So it's like 24. It's 24 in one sign, or 24. I'm saying 24, but within one sign is 30 degrees. Each division of it is 1 degree, 15 minutes. So you can only count 24 of them in one sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that 24 is specific number of harmonic of 12, right? And so we look at, it's a doubling of the 12th house, or a doubling of your spiritual propensities, or a doubling of, it could also be looked at as another way of looking at the 8th house as well, because a siddhi is someone that has acquired mastery of something, right? And it's one of the ones I really look for to find a really strong, powerful Jyotishi. Because when you see the D24 extremely powerful, that person has powers. That's what it means. They have literally powers that can go deep into things, right? The 12th house is a house of research as well. Most people don't look at it that way because it's also symbolized the house of sleep and the subconscious, quote unquote, if you will. But it's also a house of deep, deep, deep soul-searching research. Long journey, going on not just a pilgrimage, but going on a life journey to find something. That's the 12th house too. So it can indicate occult studies in many ways. So the 12th house is understood that, it's your spiritual house. It's your house that spiritualizes you. The houses that literally causes you to have to let go in order to gain something of a higher and more sublime value.
Yeah.
So when we know that harmonic tells if that person has powers they bring from the inner planes. That makes sense, right? Because the 12th house is that, what do you call it? That thin line between the physical and the what? Metaphysical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're at that 12th house, harmonic is doubled, which is the D24, because the D12 is the Dwadashamsha, and we see in the Dwadashamsha, right, the parents, which that's every 2 degrees 30 minutes. So we see the parents do that, mother and father. All right, but the doubling of that is the Siddha, right, and that is when we can see now what you bring from the inner planes to this physical plane. Meaning, are you psychic? Can you do astrology? Can you meditate deeply? Can you all kinds of different things, right? In that particular, so that's just one of my favorites that I go to. When I pull a person's chart, I go there kind of sometimes first because I just want to see, like, am I dealing with somebody that has these high level of spiritual abilities? Because if it is, so our conversation is going to be a lot different.
So when you're looking at that D24, what's just, I know you're not going to go deep into it, but what's a couple things you would look for to see?
Jupiter. I always look for Jupiter. Mm-hmm. I look for the moon to be in specific signs, right? So in order to handle powers, right? In order to handle cities, in order to do what we do as a priest, because, right? Mm-hmm. You understand? You have to have a stable mind. Right. You have to have a mind that is stabilized. When you're dealing with certain things and forces and things, you have to be stable-minded, right? And the moon in the D24 is one of the first things, along with Jupiter, I look for. Now, here's the secret. I want to know, well, what do you look for? I look for the moon to be in a fixed sign. Right. This is just kind of the training that you get, right? But you look for the moon to be in a fixed sign. Taurus, right? Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius. Now, we can eliminate Scorpio because we know that kind of debilitates the mind in the sense of the normal consideration of planetary placements, or what we call the Vashtas,
Yeah.
right? The states and conditions of a planet. But nonetheless, right, even if it's in that, in Moon and Scorpio, folks, any debilitation can be strengthened by many different planets. I've seen Moon in Scorpio, and the person is one of the most profound psychic people that I know, and not unbalanced, right? It just, the Moon in Scorpio opens the propensity for that to happen, and other things being there can exacerbate that. But the moon just being in Scorpio does not mean, it's just hammer time for the moon.
Mm-mm.
It's challenging in some ways, and no matter what you're dealing with, but sometimes the challenge is a reward because you get powers with it.
Yeah.
So if I see the moon in the D24 in a fixed sign, right, preferably Taurus, right, which is exaltation, but if I see it in Leo or Aquarius, I will automatically know that person has a keen mind for deep studies. The moon may not be there in the D1, right? But the moon has to be strong in the D1 as well, right? So, that's one of my favorites just to look for. I'd look for those planets to see quickly and gauge the propensity of a person's ability to go deep into knowledge. Another one I really kind of dig is the Vim Shamsha, which is the harmonic right before the Siddha Shamsha, which is it's 1 degree 30 minutes of a chart, 1 degree 30 minutes of a sign. So we cut that, right, and we can see the spiritual propensities of a person, right? And so, if you're extremely devoted, right, to the Supreme Being, or to a part, it could be an aspect, whatever, Orisha or Netter, some people have propensities for certain Netters. I get it, right? Because some people just, like, that's my Netter, right? They call to it, they hearken to it. It could be close to what we call your Ori and Orisha in the Yoruba system, right? But, in the Vim Shamsha, we can see your propensities for spiritual development. I mean, we see everything, y'all, when we look into you. I hate to say it like that, but it's nothing to hide. You can't hide anything from an advanced astrologer. You just can't. You might think we don't know because we don't say it, but we do know. You know what I mean? It's like we can sit there and like certain things just don't need to be said, right? Just don't need to be. Unless we're having that conversation. But we do see it. We don't see everything, right? Let me also say, we can't see like your thoughts sitting there looking at you. Like, a lot of people will say, oh man, I used to think you could read my thoughts. No, it don't work that way, right? But I can tell what's going on. I can see what's inside your mind. One of the things that you're instructed, right, is to never give your bots of information, or your astrology information to anybody. Don't do it, folks. I'm telling you that people can work witchcraft on you quickly. Right? Quickly. If I know you have a debilitated Venus, do you think I could push certain buttons? I can. And the more emotion I elicit, the more magic I can cause to work over you. Because emotion and magic are key components of one another. Or really, emotion is a key component of magic, because that's what magic is. Just balled up emotion. Thrown at you. Right? Right. In certain regards, there's other forms of magic, right? But nonetheless, right? And there's nothing supernatural. It's all natural. But nonetheless, right, back to the Vargas, right? Each one of these Vargas really has a deep analysis within it. So most of the Vargas have deities that are associated with certain portions of that chart. So this is where it diverges from Western astrology, right? In that the application of it is much more spiritualized. And I teach that in my class. We go through it in the first couple of classes, understanding what it is that you're studying. You're not just studying astrology. You're studying aspect of what is called the Vedas, right? The Jyotish is the eye, are the eyes of the Vedas, right? And so there's other aspects to this once you understand that it's a portion or a parcel of a greater system. Then you can understand why each one of these particular charts has within it certain constructs to reveal certain energy patterns or principles, nectars, deities, whatever you want to call it, to actually access and to invoke and inculcate to make things right or more focused in that area of life. So it gets to that point, right? To where you use this in a very precise way, because that's what these all are, very precise aspects of the chart. That's why the time is just, it's without it, you can't do these types of charts. It just doesn't work. Another one I really do like is the most one that probably is the hardest to come by, because the time usually is many times, not only usually, but many times the time is off, and that's the Shashtiyamsha, right? And that's one that actually every 30 minutes is a new sign, right? So it's 1/60th of a sign, right? So basically every sign you have 2 Shashtiyamshas within it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding that, right, it really, that particular Varga, or they say harmonic, but cut or slice of the chart is where we see karma, right? We can take like a fine-tooth comb and go through your karma if the time is dead on. If the time is dead on, we can see where you bring from a past life and what your real lessons, when I say real lessons, meaning what's some old baggage you got, right? It's what do you say, subconscious? It's like going deep. You ever seen, most of the people have seen that movie. What's that?
Inception.
Come on, man. Thank you, my brother.
Yeah.
Yes, Inception. Yeah. So you know how Inception, you can go to certain levels, right?
Yeah.
And then it starts getting dangerous. Right? Well, when we get into the D60, right? We're looking at that. What is that in the danger, like lurking? Like, what's that woman in there that you can't get rid of? Yeah, right. That's the what's that woman sitting there that you hit her, right? Yeah, we see her, right? Or man, or whatever, whoever it is, right? Right? We see it through the D60, right? And there's other higher harmonics. All right, Vargas, go ahead.
No, I was saying is speaking on that, the whole Inception thing. I've done that before, not like on purpose, but I've been in dreams inside of dreams.
Yeah. And wake up from a dream in your dream.
Yeah, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of hearts.
Oh man, that's what I'm saying. But that moon, that's why the moon is so important in Jyotish. It is, because your mind, man, you start coming unraveled. You can look, folks, when you start studying this stuff and you really do start practicing doing stuff, little things change in your mind. Your mind changes. It's supposed to, because the mind changes naturally. It goes through cycles and phases.
Yeah.
Right, but when we start and thinking about it, like, my dreams are wild, you know what I mean? Because this kind of knowledge runs through me 24/7. You know what I mean? So, folks in my dreams be like, man, let me out of here. Do not enter there. Don't. Right? Just don't do it. But because that's where most of the spiritual training happens anyways, in your dreams.
Yeah.
That's where the real duat is. That's where the real temple is. But nonetheless, right? These Vargas, right? These amshas, these divisions, really get very, 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 very fine tuning. You have Nadyamsha, which is 150th of a sign, meaning it's every 12 minutes, right, that they cut the chart, right? So, it gets deep. It gets real deep, right? We can see sickness from the Shashtamsha, right, which is 1/6 of a sign, or basically the sixth house, right, division. We can see Saptamsha, which is, and see, I read them a little differently than from most traditional, just because my training is different. So I have a different insight and understand culture and understand ways of life a lot better than just reading a chart. That's where you become really, 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 really good, when you can fine tune the culture to the reading, because that's when you're going to talk to the person, not talking about some type of esoteric idea.
Yeah.
Right. Ashtamsha, right? We can see 1/8 of a sign, or the 8th house into the 8th house aspect of a chart. And so we can see all the sudden unexpected things, literally, and what are the instruments by whatever planets are literally inculcated in that chart in certain placements. So everything we can see, right, in those harmonics, right? It's beautiful. I don't always. Some people use them as charts themselves. I have sometimes. It does work if the time is on. If the time is right on, right, you can use them in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. If the time is not dead on, then I use it more. And I say dead on, I mean within 10. If I know the chart is off within 10 minutes, I'm not going to use the higher end Vargas. I can still use the Dashamsha, the Navamsha, right? But I'm not going to use the Shashtyamsha or the Siddhamsha or any other higher ones, because then we're talking degrees can be off. So, the Vargas, and again, these things are deep. You can go into the nakshatras of each one of these particular placements within the Vargas, because they still cut within the chart and they create a whole new chart. So, like, I could be here forever talking about these things, folks, but I just wanted folks to know that the power of this science is backed by a spiritual tradition that is far exceeds any type of Western thinking, where it's just purely mathematical. This is more mathematical / spiritually oriented, if you will. That's just why we discussed, I gave a kind of understanding or a backdrop of the D9 in that regard. And they all work that way.
Indeed. So yeah, with all that being said, right? This episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Caliprusia Astrology, and Patreon. Our patrons on Patreon, and for all the people on Patreon, be on the lookout. We got me and Rod gonna talk a little bit, but got some things that we're gonna test out on you guys before we maybe put it out to the full audience and everything like that. So be on the lookout for that or whatnot. But yeah, man, this is a great breakdown of the divisional charts, because I know, if you get your chart, you got all these different ones and you're like, all right.
It gets hairy, right?
Yeah. But just looking at my charts and stuff like that, I can see them. You just you see what's going on in that main chart, but be able to just kind of see the color of it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. in the divisionals or whatnot, man. So this is definitely a episode that you want to listen to again and stuff like that, and quench your get your wet your whistle a little bit, and then you go ahead and get to class and go ahead and get the full drink.
Dive on in, yeah. Get on, get submerged. For sure, man.
Indeed. So, I want to thank you all again for tuning in. We up here at episode 16, and go, if you're listening, you're checking us out. I know we got some some listeners out there all over the world and stuff like that, man. Hit us up. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Cosmic Convo. That's COSMIC VO on Instagram. We're on Facebook as Cosmic Convos Podcast. Follow us, share it, tell your friends about it and everything like that, so we could, go and get this angle of the science out there to the world. All right. So with that being said, peace. We're out.
Peace.